Anywhere, yeah. So they have. The Ocean Beach. Just. I should be here to flex. That was really cool, but then we took. It was really. Yeah. Thanks for the recommendation. That's what somebody else said that I asked me, and who's.
I read my hair will
Keep going. Yep.
go on without him.
Okay,
I'm not gonna call him, already sick.
all right.
Save those hats, yeah.
So welcome to the Parks and Recs board meeting tonight, special meeting. I'm the vice chair, so give me a little slack. We'll call this meeting to order. And is there a roll call?
Yes, Richard Swarthout,
Here.
John Cops not here, Karen Stone, Conley, Scott Reed,
Here.
Alex Larson. Here. Here, perfect.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Right. We don't have any approval of meeting minutes. We'll do that next Tuesday. I'll send those out this week. I do not have any board communications. Are there any public comments or anything other than the agenda items? Anybody on Zoom?
Anything that's not on the agenda?
I'm on Zoom, Rachel.
Any public comments? No, okay.
Good.
All right, so we will move on to our discussion items. Hold on, I'm having trouble with my puck. Give me 1 second. That way everyone can see it. Okay, perfect. All right, so as Scott said, Dana is not here, so Scott, we're running the meeting. Dana did come up with just a short presentation in regards to the Kiwanis grant, and then Karen is going to present that in her absence. So let me bring that up and go for it.
Okay, so-
Rachel, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just wasn't sure.
And Dana, feel free to add as I kind of go through your presentation that you put together.
Oh, I'm sure you'll be great.
Got my sound on.
So it looks like the first part of this is kind of how this all came about. And that included a visit to the Kiwanis Park. And it was agreed that it would be great if we could fund some of these items from the Michigan DNR Trust Fund grant, which Rachel has been working on. And we need to make sure that what we're asking for aligns with our long-range plan and vision for the park, which would suggest creating a master plan for the park. Lastly, we want to make sure that we're prepared for questions and have covered our bases. Kind of reminder of what we learned in the course of the playground discussions. Area residents and council want to see a well thought out and well documented planning process and a tight, well-researched plan. So we talked about putting together a master plan at a future meeting of the Parks Board. I'm kind of going through like our vision of the park and going into the future. And I've got some ideas I can pass out to you all later. So our big goals are to make Kiwanis Park an area resource for recreation activities. And that includes things we're all familiar with. We want to be able to use it 12 months a year for people of all ages and abilities. And we want opportunities for passive as well as active recreation. So passive meaning classes, learning opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. We want to maintain the rustic character and emphasis on green space over hardscapes at the park. And we want to build in flexibilities for gatherings and events. So places that we can hold those in the park. And we want to protect the natural resources and seek environmentally aware solutions throughout everything we do in the park itself. So this is kind of the actual site plan of the existing park. So at the top of the right there, it faces north, no, excuse me, south, right? So this is coming up from the bottom, which is actually Arbor Street, not Ann Street, on the bottom right corner there. Going up into the park, you're passing the playground, the compost operations beyond that. The disc golf and the trails actually surround the entire park. So it's not just on one side, it surrounds the entire park from west, south, east, and north. And the sledding hill, of course, is all in the middle of that. So the playground, all of these are existing elements of the park. And we want to maintain as much of those as we can, but we want to improve them and make them even better than we are. So we're using some asphalt. We have an older building with restrooms, which are really not ADA. They do not meet the standards for ADA. We have gravel dirt parking. Our forest is primarily hardwood. We have a very large sledding hill. Actually, one thing that's not noted here is that it's actually the highest point in the Harbor Springs area at over 770 feet, I believe is what the elevation is there. We have the composting operation, and the city water towers sit on one edge of the park as well, which is, kind of where the trails can empty out when you go all the way around the park on the trails. So scope elements that have been discussed before, and these are really important for Rachel, because these are things that need to be covered in the grant application itself. So one thing that we've talked about quite a bit is the building itself. Can we expand it? Can we improve it? Do we need a new building? That's something that probably can't be answered in time for the grant application itself, except possibly for the ADA bathrooms.
Karen, if I could interrupt, this might be a good time to talk about our meeting with Rob Mossberg from the Cottage Company.
Right, yeah, so Dan and I met with Rob last week and kind of went through an architectural plan that he had put together for a couple of citizens a few years back. It was quite a sizable building, very lovely, probably not within our wheelhouse right now, but it did address some of the things that we were looking for. But basically the outcome and what he had said at the meeting is that he really can't move forward with anything in terms of a building design without really having a clear understanding of what we want the building to be.
Karen, if I may,
yes.
just backing up for a moment. Rob did say that structurally, the building is in good shape. It has a good foundation, no settling. And so we would have the option either to add on to it or replace it, build a new building. There's a lot of nostalgia with that building. And actually, the last time that this was looked at and the year these plans were from was 2005, so quite a while ago. And then I also, on a different day last week, met with Art Call and Dwayne Pager, two builders in Harbor Springs, and kind of had them look over the building and give a similar assessment. And they said the same thing. One comment about if we did add on to the building, that the most logical place would be to the north, which is where the septic tank and septic field are right now. One thing that I think Rachel may talk about is a possible opportunity to hook up to the city's sewer now. So that would then open up that area to expand the building potentially. The good thing about going that way is you could put a crawl space under it, and then you could run all of your utilities and heating ducts and things like that through the crawl space rather than, everything comes in kind of at that, let's see, that would be the east side of the building there, rather than trying to, dig a trench through the slab so that it is built on a slab. So that was just a little bit of input on the building, which I think is important for us to have when we consider making any improvements such as ADA bathrooms. Do we want to put $40,000 into the building or whatever the amount is, if we may be doing something different with it down the road. We maybe just don't have enough information. Okay, sorry, that was long. Back to it, Karen.
I think you covered it, but I think one thing that clearly came out of that meeting with him to me was the fact that we really can't have a plan until we decide what we want it to be. So whether that be just remodeling what we have or adding on to it, we really have to decide. And I think this is all part of the master planning process, like where do we want to go with this park? What do we want to use it for? And therefore, what does the building need to be? So he was pretty open to, I mean, he's in nowhere prepared to, build a new building for us, but he was willing to give us input. I thought was pretty helpful, actually.
Just one more thing I thought about is, he did say sometimes in a case like this, you can spend an awful lot of money bringing a building up to code. So that would be something to think about. And I think probably the first step in deciding what we want to do with the building is deciding, what we want to put in the building, what function it should serve. So back to number 2.
Right, so we did talk about adding a deck to the building to give us a little bit more seating outdoors, so we can actually have more people observing the ski hill or, being there for just general recreation or sitting after a game of disc golf or whatever. So we did talk about the deck as an add-on, a temporary add-on anyway. Add an ice skating rink. That's something I think that we're kind of required to do as part of a promise when we moved when we changed up the skate park. Upgrade the trail system, another part of it. Upgrade disc golf with some new tees on the back nines. Improve accessibility for all and improve parking, whatever that might be. So go ahead, Rachel.
Let me just clarify something. So first, for improving, expanding the building, when we talk about improving, expanding the building, we are saying when we choose these scope items that we want to leave that option open if we choose to tear down the building, rebuild, or expand. The trust fund grant does not allow for indoor recreation projects. So the building wouldn't have fit within the grant scope item. So it can't be a scope item besides creating those bathrooms to be outdoor access and ADA accessible. I went to a conference, I spoke with DNR in one of the sessions, and with upgrading the disc golf course, that's not a great fit for the grant for a couple of reasons. The trails aren't ADA, and you could do some very basic upgrades to a disc golf course that wouldn't need to be involved. We could do a community grant or something much smaller for that. So just for clarification.
Yeah, and those were meant more like for scope items for a master plan. So sorry.
Yep.
Just to
That's okay. I just
clarify.
wanted to clarify that we were all on the same page.
Yep.
Well, I think
Gotcha.
by the end of this meeting, Rachel, you need to have a list of things you want to include in the grant.
Yeah, and I'll go through that with my
Yeah.
next.
So this is kind of a background to that and some of the decisions that have to be made. Then going additional questions, we talked about Rob Mossberg in our meeting with him. We want to prioritize sustainability and environmental awareness as part of this. We want to look at the greenest hard surface we can for parking and walkways. We want to make sure the site layout is flexible for accommodating gatherings year round. And I think we kind of have to change your mindset away from just being a winter park to a year round park, because this is a pretty valuable piece of property. And then would it make sense to trail the ice rink on the lawn before committing money to space? And from what you told us today earlier, we can't really do
If
that.
we're gonna put the ice rink in the grant,
on the grant.
it has to be a permanent structure.
Right. And then, so we've got a couple of park layout suggestions, and I think this is pretty close to one of the layouts that Vanessa had done here, and how the park might be laid out. And so we've got our trails surrounding the park, the disc golf surrounds the park. You see the building expansion on the northwest corner there, parking location in the drop-off loop at the bottom of the drawing there, which is kind of the roundabout to drop people off at the building or drop materials off, whatever you need. And then the location of the ice rink, which would be on the south end of the building, the playground location pretty much being where it is right now. And then the ADA loop, which would provide access to the playground and other parts of the park for people that need that.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things, and that this is not meant to be dueling plans or anything like that. I just think graphically, not with lists. You can see where the dash line where the current drop-off loop is and how it moves over. So basically the ice rink is going to go where the drop-off loop is. And what I like about that is that we don't have to take as many trees out. That's such a beautiful site right now. And then I don't know, I would also encourage us to have discussion about whether we need that little loop on the ice skating rink. That's going to involve taking out, again, more trees, including the really big sugar maple at the corner of the building. And then I think it'd be good to discuss with Lucas if there is any flexibility on the composting. So those lines that are over on the right side, those are those compost piles that the whole operation that they do, which is really pretty impressive. And there's a dash line where the current loop is in the pile. So right now we are not going any further into those piles, but it would be great if we could have a little bit more room. And then just a comment about parking. I like the idea of kind of keeping it at the perimeters of the area rather than having it kind of come up through the middle. And that's it.
Good. All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm just gonna do a quick overview of the grant. We did most of this our last meeting, but if anyone had any questions. So eligibility for the grant, local units of government, we are eligible. You need a 25% match from cash donations, general fund, or in-kind donations. This is for both grants, the trust fund and the passport. You need a 5-year recreation plan approved by DNR for the trust fund. You need to do a 5-year recreation plan or a capital improvements plan for the passport. All applicants must hold at least one public meeting to receive input about the application. We've held 2, and then we're gonna do a public hearing on Monday for each. You don't need one for the passport, but we may as well because we're doing one for the trust fund. Eligible projects to be public outdoor recreation projects, fishing, hunting, beaches, boating access, campgrounds, winter sports areas, playgrounds, ball fields. It's pretty open for projects. Grant obligations. It's important to note that Kiwanis has already held to a lot of these grant obligations because we've had a DNR grant in the past from them. So the land included in the boundary of the project site must remain open to public outdoor recreation. The grantee must maintain the site, including facilities, the ADA standards for accessible design. You need a DNR plaque that's already at Kiwanis. You would just add one to the skate park. They're yay big. And then an entrance sign identifying the park as a public recreation site. And the recreation site must be open to all users, resident and non-resident. So you fall into all of those. So the Kiwanis renovation would be, the grant request would be for $300,000. And then there's been a $75,000 anonymous match if we are awarded the grant. The application for both grants is due April 1st. And the scope items we have currently are 80 accessible outdoor restrooms, ice rink, the storage building for the ice rink supplies, and then parking updates. And then public input, we've had parks, we had the Parks Board meeting February 21st. We have this meeting, we'll have City Council. We've had all our Kiwanis events with those surveys. There was a survey done in 2020 in regards to park improvements, and then we did the survey in 2022 for our master plan. The 2022 park survey, the skating rink was ranked highest on amenities wish list. Kiwanis Park, according to the 2022 survey, is one of the top 2 most visited parks within city limits. That could be winter use or summer use, because we learned at the last meeting that the disc golf course is used quite a bit. This is not the best overview. I have a better one, but this is what the outlook looks now. As you can see, all the trees, the playground would be over here. Here's the loop around, and here's the compost site. It would be hole 10 on the disc golf course. And then the concept design, we have 3 we can look at today. They're just very, very, very little. And I will let Vanessa Warren from OHM go over. Do you want to go over some of the designs?
Oh, I can at least tell you why I did the voodoo I did. So The parking lot is stopping where it's stopping simply because of the soils. So even though I think it would have been a hard sell for the DPW to let us take that space anyways, the soils wouldn't allow it. So any hard surface, pretty much beyond the line of where the tanks are, they're so soft, they're so organic that they would all have to be taken out for us to put anything in there. So that's why the loop stops there and we have the parking the way it is. In this concept, the playground is on the north side of the building. The drainage field and sewer is being removed. Even though you might say, well, if we don't put the playground there, can we take that element out? No, because as soon as bathrooms go in, as soon as the park gets used more, the drainage field isn't going to be adequate anyways. And so the DPW really asked that sewer be a part of this. Stormwater is also a part of this. So that has gone in the grant as well. So there's a drop-off area. We have 90-degree parking along. We have the shed. We have 6-foot wide sidewalks with benches. And we have areas where the city can bring out those fire, what are those?
Solo stove.
So yes, so we have opportunities there. Currently, there are 3 drains in the rink and 3 drains in the parking lot. To capture the storm water and drain it and daylight it out further out of the site. It is possible with green infrastructure. And you could do this with low cost. But it is possible for us to develop bioswales, maybe some rain gardens, and capture the water that way, and maybe relook at some of the drainage structures when it came to that. So that's this one. Now, the loop is always in here, and the loop for the ice rink has always been in there simply to create a sense of place, to do something different. The square can be used for basketball or other activities in the summer, but truly that loop is to create an experience and to have something different instead of just a rectangle. So that is, throughout. And so you can go to the next one. So in this one, the playground is now moved further to the north in case the building, you decide you want to expand the building, you don't have to go into the playground. It's just expanded a little bit that way and more green space, and then everything stayed the same. And then in another concept, the playground is towards the south. The reason why the playground keeps showing up next to the building is simply to keep as many of the activities in one area. It's easier on folks that are watching the kids. It's close to the bathrooms. The playground in this concept now is separated from the bathrooms. It's a little bit further away. I mean, this isn't that big of a park, but that was the whole thinking behind why the playground was put where it was. It was flat. We weren't taking down any trees by putting that there. So that was the thinking behind that. What else would you like me to go through, Rachel?
Does anyone have any questions about the designs while Vanessa is here? I know we discussed them today, but
Yeah,
I'll
a couple
open
of
it to others.
questions I have is on the rink. Are there many trees that have to come out with this design, or if you minimize the tree removal, what's that like?
Yeah, there's wiggle room with this.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go out there and let's just say, we are not taking down that maple. That's not a big deal. We can wiggle this whole thing around. The important thing is that it's in the grant and it's a program element. And this whole thing needs to be engineered. You know, the sewer would need to be engineered. And I feel right, the prices are going crazy. But I had my engineers look at our numbers. We figured out how much pipe we were gonna need, how many manholes we were gonna need. So we figured all of that out in that grant. So it all has to be engineered. All the DNR is gonna care is that the rink gets in there.
How specific does the grant have to be? Do you have to have finalized?
Right
like,
now, they're
this
just
is
looking
what
for
it is?
scope items.
Just
Like
the
Vanessa
scope
said, if we say a scope item is an ice rink, they want to know an ice rink's going in. If we say
You don't have to
ADA
say,
outdoor.
This is where the ice
No,
rink is.
right, not where they're not.
You know, we have not an ice
Sure.
rink.
We have all summer, we have all year to like pinpoint exactly what we're doing. Also, it's important to note that Nate Jacks is the skate park director and he manages the old ice rink. So if you have any questions specific to managing the ice rink, like logistics of like getting the ice, he's the person to ask, because I did not work here when the ice rink was actually open.
And so we would have the drains, we have a 6-inch curb that goes around it. And it's having it in there, right? You can always take it out. DNR is not gonna penalize you for taking it out, but it's in there and you're asking for it and you're putting enough thought into it. Because when the day is done, it's really not the drawing that's all that's important. It's that cost estimate. It is that line item cost estimate that has the sewer, that has the drains, that has the concrete. And you can always, you know, back down on it. Some of the big items, though. It's called subgrade undercutting. When you go in and take out the bad soils, it's extremely expensive. So if we are going to go in those areas, if the DPW does allow that to happen, that's not in the grant. And it probably will suck up your grant and you won't be able to get much out of it anyway. So we try and get those big ticket items and have those figured out. But, you know, I hate to even say this, the placement of the playground, the DNR is just gonna care that the playground's there. The DNR is not gonna care where it goes. And so what happens is that when the grant is approved, the engineering drawings get done, those get submitted, they make sure that all of the elements are on there, but they also understand that things get changed. The bathrooms will have to be there. The ice rink will have to be there. Parking, ADA accessible parking. That is a hard surface because that's what makes it ADA will have to be there, but we can have some wiggle room with it, particularly with the drainage, the amount of parking, that sort of thing.
Can I ask you a question about the ice rink?
Of course.
Does it have to have concrete underneath that? Is that a requirement by DNR? Is there another more hard surface that's more environmental? Or
No, and I mean, concrete is far more environmental than asphalt. So it just really has to be permanent for them. I work with a lot of communities, they have other systems and they hate them. And they don't even want to use them and they don't use them. And so this is a system that, you know, and that's why I said, you know, you can play basketball, you can get hoops out here, you can do other things on the court. Kids can rollerblade, they can roller skate. This is something that can be used as soon as that's a hard surface.
Could I make a comment or does anybody else have one right now?
What's the projected square footage of the ice rink?
I don't have that off the top of my
60
head.
by 80.
Is that it? 60 by 80?
What is it now, Nate?
I think
If you were
This
to
is
paper.
smaller than what would
Yeah.
be out there now. In terms of the loop, I think just want to share that it's brilliant, and I think that for kids and families, it's gonna be a hit.
it's just fun. We're just trying to make it fun.
I continue to have questions about it. Looks like we've got an awful lot of hardscape going in. And I also am worried that we're getting a little bit ahead of some of the things that we might want to investigate. Like, for example, let's say the circulation system was asphalt for the loop and all that, but let's say the parking spaces, other than the ADA, were like the concrete grid where you can put dirt and grass in it. Or let's say Lucas and his guys, we try for a couple of years, because this is part of our parks master plan, is to trial things when we can. Let's just try pushing up some snow banks. Let's just flood the grass and see how it goes. I know that Petoskey has 2 rinks. One is on grass and one is on concrete. So it might be really useful to talk to them about what their issues have been with both. And unfortunately, both of the rinks have been closed for most of the winter just because of how the winter was this year. So I guess it just bothers me that we would pave that much of the park on the if come that we're going to have a cold enough winter. And I guess we're not going to know that until it comes.
Nate, you can kind of speak to that with the ice rink.
You're at the mercy of, Mother Nature always. I do think that a smaller rink, is gonna be much more, successful in terms of having a rink, throughout the whole winter. I think that the size of it's really important.
You consider this to be a smaller rink?
It looks to me like it's a smaller rink. It looks to me like the size of a rink that you can do hockey or free skate, and they kind of both have their own areas.
Because the rink that we had where the skate park is now, that seemed to be smaller than what looks like this
Yeah,
drawing.
there's a lot of layers to why the rink in its current location wasn't successful. If you start out fresh and you have the right concrete, the right color of the concrete, the right situation, you can have a much more successful rink.
I think we're back to the question though of, do we want concrete? And then is that even really a good match for the grant? Rachel, I thought you had told me that in talking to people at the conference that the DNR is trying to get back to the original purpose of the trust fund grant, and that is to support natural resources and regional trail systems and things like that.
Well, they always have top, priorities. Their top priority is always gonna be trails, regional trails, specifically the Iron Trail. I mean, that's not a shocker. That's been their priority for years. And acquiring property, that's big on their list, but it's two either way. Some years DNR, because you can apply for acquisition of property, you can apply for development of property. You can go 2 ways with the trust fund grant. Some years, 80% of the grants go to acquisition and the rest go to development. Some years it's flip-flopped and most go to development and some go to acquisition. It's a board, it's a trust fund board, just like what we have here. So it depends on what their focus is. Their focus is always gonna be finishing a regional trail. That makes sense. And then it goes to development projects, but they are focused on nature-related activities. So we would want to tie into the grant some way, like Dana's saying, doing nature classes there, anything like that that connects people to the outdoors. So.
What about
So
things like the playground and the ice rink? Are those even a good fit to put in the grant?
Yeah, they're still a good fit, just because it's just not their main focus, but it's probably never gonna be their main focus. I mean, my last parks job downstate, we did a playground and 2 pavilions. We got a trust fund grant, an outdoor restroom. So.
Okay, well, and then are we thinking Porden Place for the playground?
We have it as engineered, the wood chips,
Okay,
how it is right now.
all right. I guess, my concern is that, have we spent enough time defining what our goals are for a master plan? Or are we just trying to make things fit for this grant? Like they require concrete under the ice rink. Is that really what we want though? Or are we just going to do that to try and get the money and then we've got a big slab of concrete out there and the winters are warm? What do other people think about that?
I was gonna say, I think having the concrete out there in summer months, having that be a basketball option for this town, really would be very, very successful.
Who's speaking right now? I'm sorry.
Nate,
No,
Uh,
the gentleman.
Nate, skate park director, Nate, Jack.
Okay.
Name's Nate.
But if we want one of our master plan goals for this particular park to value green space over hardscape, maybe is this where the basketball court belongs?
Well, the other part too, you can see it two ways, is that if it was a basketball court, then you have to think about painting lines, and once you start painting lines and having the concrete be anything that bright white or as white as possible, then it becomes even more difficult to make the ice. So I'm looking at going concrete's great because we have our basketball thing taken care of, and I know that would be a great spot for it, but then there's that part of it too.
What do the board members think about that as a goal for the park, about valuing green space and trying to keep it more rustic?
Personally, I think it's really important. I do know we need an ice rink. And it sounds like we're kind of required to follow certain guidelines for the ice rink, unfortunately. I see this park as being something more than it has been. But if we do have a lot of concrete down on it, it kind of takes away from the green space and everything we want it to be, because we have a lot of that already around town. But Rachel, we learned last week that the ice rink is something we need to do to get this grant.
It's two sides, like Vanessa kind of stated. We can go not concrete and do it over the grass and do a trial. But that's really not apples to apples. If it doesn't succeed, did it not succeed because people didn't want to skate, or did it not succeed because it's not the best ice rink? How do you judge that? I guess would be my question.
My feeling is if you're gonna do an ice rink, it should be done the right way and permanently, not a trial. So just one and done and do it. Nate knows best what the best surface
The
is.
best one around is the one over in Indian River, and they have a great facility for it, and they got a great structure and all the things that make it a very successful thing. We want to have an ice rink, and it's required that an ice rink is part of this. Doing something that's not on concrete will end up being a nightmare long-term. It will end up being a situation where I can just tell you, it's in your backyard doing something like that's fine. But if you're gonna do it at a city level where potentially lots of people could come, I would say that it will not be successful. It would be very, very difficult to even make it a reality, I think, if it wasn't on concrete.
So we don't really have a master plan for the park. This is because all these questions are driven by the deadline for the grant. What would happen if we didn't apply for the grant and just try to get our whole plan together for Kiwanis Park before we actually go after a grant? Or do you feel like community, based on the survey, is pretty adamant that they want to have an ice rink in town? And this is about the only place we can do it right now.
I feel we had an ice rink and we took it away for the skate park project, saying we would have an ice rink. We're not adding something. We're giving it back to the community that they already had. Actually, we're smaller. I just need to know if we're putting it in the grant or not, because I'm not gonna put it in if it's not concrete. So.
And another green infrastructure solution, it would raise the price of the grant, but where all the parking is, we can have that be pervious pavers. And so then that would help with some of the runoff. And so we could have pervious pavers where the parking spots are, and then we can have the water run off into the rain gardens then. That's just another idea. I didn't know about the green infrastructure ideas. I got them. We can do it.
I like that idea too.
And I agree with Dana that a lot of it's up to weather, and we could put it in and have a rough winter. We could have a really big winter. You know, it's hard to judge off that, you know.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to think I don't want an ice rink. I think it's super important. One just other kind of nagging thought about that is, is this the direction our winters are going to go? And if we put in this big ice rink and then find out, oh, well, shoot, we should have put in chillers, then then what do? We tear it up and don't use it in the winter? So this is where I don't, and it could be back to be freezing cold next winter, which would be great, but
I think another.
like
important
maybe we need to find out what's involved with chillers and who else has them and what's their experience been.
City of Taos is the only one that-
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of communities that do the chillers. They're wonderful. They're expensive. And
Chiller.
so it's actually pipes that run through the concrete that will freeze the water for you and will, exactly. So the communities love them. The Detroit area has been, struggling with ice for a very, very long time. And they've been putting these in. They also have been putting them in because the need for hockey space is so high down in southeast Detroit that by putting in the chillers, it's another avenue for those hockey teams to go out. And so they're always sized for hockey.
I'm curious about the one drawing you had, Vanessa, where the playground was on the north side of the building. How big is that space? Do you know?
Yeah, that space is comparable to the space. So we took the elements that were like kind of far apart where they are now. And we wanted to consolidate them, but yet we know that there has to be that safety fall zone. And so the elements kind of put together with their required safety zones has driven that size.
Is it big enough for an ice rink? This is kind of where I'm going with the question. It kind of moves the ice rink from the green space and the current playground and puts it in a place where there isn't anything else right now.
I think that was looked at years ago and they couldn't.
Yeah, because
I
of
don't
that
know
stuff.
why.
Yeah, Lucas made a comment that it could not go there.
There
And
was a reason.
there was a
Someone looked at that
reason.
years
Is it
ago.
field or something? Is it
Yeah.
septic or?
To me, this maybe just brings up the issue again of, do we need to do a few more investigations? Like maybe we should look into chillers and see how much they are. I just feel, I'm so excited about this park and I just feel like somebody is going to want to like endow this park and, they may want to endow the ice rink with chillers. And that way I would feel better about Penn Creek because
More
we know we're going to
donations,
be able to have
Dana.
an ice rink on it.
You have a volunteer.
Raise their hand up at the money.
What's the acceptance rate for this grant? Are there like 100 anticipated applicants and they only award 10? Like, are
I
we?
think the average, and unless you can correct me.
this is a very competitive grant.
Okay.
Very competitive grant. And they look at a lot of things. They look at, when's the last time that this community received a grant? They look at, the size of the community. They look at so much, but Harbor Springs hasn't gotten this grant.
If we get the grant, can we say, no, we don't want it? Like, how long is the acceptance?
That would be not
Recommended.
recommended.
I'm just trying to look at are we putting all of our efforts and thoughts into these exact details at this time when it's obvious we've got some more work to do?
You have about 3 years
Okay.
upon getting the grant
To actually.
to actually design it, vet through any issues that you might have, work with the DNR to vet through it, stuff like soils and, boy, our sewer pipes aren't as big as we thought. I mean, there's issues that will come up and you can vet that through the DNR and you have about 3 years.
Vanessa, I have a question for you. Let's say we put in for a concrete base under the skating rink. And then let's say in our investigations over the next few months, we find out, oh, chillers aren't so expensive as we thought or something. Can we add them?
Absolutely. Oh, not to the grant, but you can add it to the project And when the grant is being built, those chillers can go right on in with it.
Okay.
Does that make
And that's-
sense?
So are we gonna, is parking something that we're gonna try and deal with the grant?
Yes.
So
We're-
then, could we look into doing permeable pavers, or could we look into doing some way where we can get around doing a whole stormwater system and take a more green approach to things?
Absolutely. I'd love to get the pipes out of the parking lot.
So if we're looking at, we have to come up with the 3 scope items. And we're saying, yes, we want an ice rink, but we don't really know what that's gonna look like yet. That's still okay moving forward with the grant.
Yeah,
right?
even if like, let's say hypothetically, we decide to put the playground right there. And we decide, oh, that's kind of a big square footage and we have. And we wanted, let's say we decide to do a new playground. And like I'm not saying we're gonna do this, I don't want, like, there are changes that can be made to any of that. Like Melissa was saying, the only thing DNR wants to know is you're putting in parking, you're putting in an ice rink.
There's gonna be a parking.
Yeah.
There's gonna be.
It's really
an
a
ice
drop
rink,
down.
and
That's all it
we're gonna
is. It's items and it's
Right.
drop down.
Sidewalk,
Like what it is.
ADA
Yeah,
bathrooms,
that's it.
landscaping. You get more points for green solutions, so the permeable pavers are gonna give you more points. Native plants, rain gardens, more points. So that's actually gonna help, and then we can get the pipes out. But then if you get that donor for that chiller, then you just, when it's being built, you put the chillers in.
So it doesn't, is it funded by line item? I mean, is the total grant 300,000, and you've said in your grant application, I'm gonna spend $80,000 on the ice rink. And you find out really need $80,000 on the
That
ice
could
rink.
be adjusted.
It can be adjusted. Okay.
It can be
Within
adjusted
reason.
to point. So, the cost estimate. The DNR is like way up here looking down, and I'm in the nitty gritty. Because the scope items are very vague. It's an ice rink. It's green infrastructure. It's ADA bathrooms. But I know to have the bathrooms, I need sewer. So now all of a sudden, the price of the bathroom goes way. Now the DNR, they don't care how I made it happen. They're just gonna give the money for it. So you just gotta make sure it all comes down to that cost estimate. And the DNR would have the right, if we, if the community decides, we're just not gonna do all that parking. Then the DNR has said, okay, that's fine. But if you're gonna take out 50% of the parking, we are going to take 50% out of that money because we can use that money somewhere else.
But could we put 50% of that money into a project for our park? That maybe further enhance the ice rink or enhance the building further? Can we shift the money
You may
around?
or may not, it's how you sell it to your grant coordinator. Sometimes you gotta kill the lily.
Mhm.
Back to the ADA bathrooms. Vanessa, do you want to talk about what finally ended up being done with that? Were you gonna have 2 stalls in both bathrooms? Is there gonna be a way to get into the bathroom from the inside of the building?
Sure, so they're ADA, and for the DNR to really be interested in it, it needs access from the outside. Once you have the access from the outside, access from the inside becomes a security and privacy issue. Plus the pipes kind of get in the way with the thing. Now, I had a mechanical engineer give me a price. He really felt that the bathrooms could be done for about 14,000. I think I put 20,000 in the grant just to make sure. So it's 2 ADA bathrooms, stalls, each has their own door that can be locked and unlocked, and it's only from the outside.
The 20,000 total or $20,000 for men's, 20,000? for
No,
women?
they are both unisex and it's 20,000 for the whole thing. And that might come in under budget.
And that's access only from the outside?
Correct.
And to make it from the inside, is this only a security issue or are there other issues with
The
it?
pipes,
The pipes meaning?
the pipes on the wall get in the way of
Already
the door.
And they're already there, the pipes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're reusing what's there.
But how do we get into the bathrooms with the pipes there right now if there's indoor access?
They're not ADA accessible,
Nice.
so we have to make them bigger.
Gotcha,
And once we do that,
gotcha, yeah.
It seems like I get what Karen's saying, though, that couldn't we keep the pipes kind of in their same location so there would be an option to putting a door in?
what we
And,
are
you know,
keeping them-
I know that Rachel's concerns, like who's gonna lock up after a rental, that kind of thing. And, you know, I think that, again, this is another item that we need to have more talk about. And then my other big concern about including that in the grant is, what if somebody comes forward and says, I want to buy a $500,000 building for Kiwanis Park? And then we've put whatever, you know, $20,000 into the bathrooms. I mean, I know it's not city money, but it's state money, and it just seems like maybe it's not fiscally responsible until we know what we want to do with the building.
Well, I think it might be seen as an interim solution if we could build a new building through a fantastic donation. It's gonna take a few years to put that up. We still need to have the bathrooms anyway. I thought the bathrooms would be
I'm just
more-
saying, maybe they shouldn't be part of the grant, though. That it's just kind of throwing away money if we, you know, if it did, we did end up, or maybe we just make a commitment, we want to save the building and that's a good spot for bathrooms, you know.
They
even if
have
we
to be
want-
part of the grant.
They have to be. part
They
of the-
have to be part of the grant. There has to be ADA
Mhm.
accessible restrooms.
There does, there has to be accessible parking, accessible sidewalks, accessible bathrooms.
I think we should follow that. I mean, even if we didn't have the grant, we probably should have ADA accessible bathrooms at our park anyway.
I'd like to add that the reality of having access to bathrooms from the outside is gonna be a huge bonus for the foot traffic, because disc golfers run that place. And having accessibility to those bathrooms is gonna be a huge bonus for everybody who uses that park. And potentially saves the city money, because we don't have to have a porta potty there.
I'm not disagreeing with that. It's just, you know, how much money do we want to put into the old building without having done investigations on whether we'll, you know, in the future enlarge it or, you know.
If we
Sure.
enlarged it, would it take away from the outdoor access? If you
Nope.
put these restrooms in, and then someone came along in 2 years and said, I wanna add on to this building.
Just keep the
Was that the
bathrooms.
restroom? Yes.
You could always add on to
Yeah.
the building.
If we were
put
taking the building
bathrooms
down, that would be a different discussion, but if we're adding on, that would be feasible.
I think it's a good spot in the building, you know, if we continue on the idea that maybe the building goes to the north. I think it's a good spot. It's close to the playground, close to the ice rink, close to the sledding hill. I just think it could be kind of difficult, not having access, like if you have a 5-year-old birthday party in the winter and that you got to take the 5-year-old outside in their snowsuit to go to the bathroom, you know?
Is it possible to leave one facing outside, one facing inside, or is that against what the grant is?
You need access, yeah, from the outside.
But, you know, like one,
One internal and one external.
yeah,
That's a good idea.
but the internal wouldn't be ADA, but the external
external.
would still be,
They
right?
should both be ADA.
Yeah.
You want to design inclusive
Yep.
from here on out in the world.
What if we did do that? And Vanessa, could we get a second stall in the bathroom? Rachel seemed to think maybe that you had said that might be possible.
If we did what? If we kept it how it is?
If we added another stall in each of the bathrooms.
Then we start going into the existing building. The existing footprint of the bathrooms, we use that existing footprint to get these ADA.
So you're saying you
So-
can't get that
Correct,
5-foot
Correct.
diameter
correct,
and stall? Okay.
correct. Just kind of had to count our losses on that one.
Do they, let's see, do the DNR grant people care if one of them is accessible from the inside and one from the outside? And they're both ADA?
They do not care, but they will only fund the one that is accessible from the outside. So we would back out that money, and then when Rachel writes the narrative, she simply states it's only one because the other one's going to be from the inside.
Could you have an external door and an internal door? And when there's an event, lock the external door so the people inside the warming hut only have access from the inside?
The
on one
pipes
of the
get in the way.
bathrooms?
We tried that. The pipes get in the way.
To widen the door from the inside, they would get the
And that becomes tough. Those bathrooms are gonna be used a lot in the summer months, a lot. And so it would be nice to have two that would be accessible from the outside. We're gonna see the disc golfers use that, the playground folks are gonna use it. I think you're gonna find that this park is gonna be heavily used in all of the months. Even though the ice rink is there, it's still, it has gathering opportunities, it has deck. So there's gonna be a lot of opportunities for people to gather outside. There's triangulation. And so I just think that you're gonna find this park's gonna need the two.
It took me a minute to wrap my head around it too. That's a no. I questioned it and I asked all the same questions you guys are asking. And I guess at the end of the day, how I thought of it, is I thought of it like if I had never been there. I'd never been to Kiwanis Park and I went up there and there weren't restrooms, but they were in the building. It seems strange. Building really isn't rented. I mean, it's rented quite often, but not enough to be more than what the outside use is. The main component of the park is outdoor use. I don't think even when we do our sledding events, I can really think if it would be that big of a hiccup for people to go around to use them. I mean, you can decide amongst yourselves, but it took me a minute to process it as well.
Well, the bathrooms at the Harbor Master Building are outside.
Yeah, and if we're talking about expanding the building anyway in a couple of years, you know, whether it's a different grant, or whatever we decide to do, then we put in another restroom indoor, and it'll be hooked to city sewer, and it'll be cost effective.
But I guess the bottom line is if we want to apply for anything in this grant, we have to have those bathrooms. The only way we can have them is if it's outside only. Is that right?
Correct.
Back to the building, just another question. We had talked about maybe putting a deck around the front side. Is that something that wouldn't,
That's in there.
that is in there? Okay.
Yeah, it's in
An
all three
existing one.
concepts
Cool.
and it's in the cost estimate.
So do you have? a
Now, Vanessa,
breakdown?
do you have it as concrete patio or do you have it as wood deck?
I have that as wood, so it's a mixture of concrete and wood deck. We're doing both.
Okay, I don't really see where it is on this drawing we're looking at right now.
Well, this is one of the concepts, so that's concrete, and then Rachel, we have a wood deck there, and then we have a wood deck there.
Would
And
it
then
make
it's
more
in
sense
different, it's in different spots in the other ones. That is the concept where we move the playground further to the north. If you felt you wanted to expand that building and you didn't want to move the playground, I didn't know how in the future or anything with that building. So that's that one. Rachel, if you go back to the other one. Yeah, so there, we've got the deck that goes out into the grassy area and we have the deck that's next to the building.
You have one overlooking the
Yes.
sledding hill?
Yes.
Okay.
And once again, through the engineering, if you want, want just one giant one, if you want a couple, it's in there, it's in the grant.
We don't have to be that specific.
Right.
So when you look at the $300,000 now, I don't know if you can answer this question, but how does that break down into these projects with the ice rink, bathrooms, the parking? How does that all split? How does that $300,000?
So Rachel's gonna take our cost estimate that we did, and she's going to, there's that beauty right there. And she's going to actually start assigning numbers to the scope. And I can help her, but she can also, I'm sure she's quite capable. So I would suggest to her for the bathrooms that the sewer go in with that bathroom line item. The storm, I would suggest go in with the parking lot. item. So she's gonna have to go through here line by line and assign it to the scope items. Cause like I said, DNR, they're way up here. They don't get into the weeds. But then they expect you to get into the weeds, because when they give you the money, they want it done.
Right.
So like we said, tonight with this one, I just need to know what scope items to put in and what to put for the public hearing on Monday. That's what's most important, is what is the public truly commenting on? So,
Well, it sounds like the spoke items have been identified as the bathrooms, the ice rink, and the parking. And then some additions onto the building, which would, you put the bathrooms and then the deck as part of the building adds, or I don't know how you do that, but
yeah.
sound like it's three scope options.
I'm just a little worried about putting this drawing out there. Is this then gonna be in people's mind, this is the master plan for the park, when we've got so much more to talk about still, do you know what I mean?
It already is though. It's in our parks master plan. We put
Pardon
it
me?
out there months ago. This is in our parks master plan. Not this specific one, but the one done in 2020. So to me, we never should have put it in there if we weren't gonna move forward in some way.
Well, I think we're moving forward. It's just, I'm nervous about putting a plan out there where things aren't really where we might want them, and then people are, saying, well, that's not where we thought they were gonna be, or,
We have to,
So
though. We
it's
have to do a public hearing and we have to have a visual. There has to be something for them to comment on. We can make it clear that it's the scope items. I mean, I can say that till I'm blue in the face. I mean, people will understand or they won't, that we can adjust.
Will all
We-
three options be available?
Huh?
Will all
We'll
three be-
probably pick, yeah. Pick one, because the three options here or there, we can change any of those, correct?
Yeah, I
Throughout
can
the
put them out
process.
there to, so
Yeah.
you guys can
We can-
visualize the difference.
Yeah,
So what do we lose if we don't apply at all? $300,000?
yeah.
I kind of think it's worth it
I
going
think we
forward.
should apply.
I think it's worth going for it. I mean, there's work ahead, and definitely we need to work on our master plan for the park. But as long as we know we can massage what we put in the grant, we got some flexibility in the end, it sounds like. Is that right? Am I right about that?
And you have 3 years to actually
Correct.
complete the project, so.
So we get awarded in December. Yep, so we get awarded in December and then. Correct me if I'm wrong, the announcement goes out in January and then you still don't start probably until, that fall. I mean, when we did ours, which was just 2 pavilions and a restroom building, well, that was pandemic. That took about 4 years, start to finish.
And can it be done in phases?
So it'd be bid out and then you go with the lowest reputable bid. That would be local, it's gotta be a Michigan company, and then I think you have so much time, you can ask for extensions if something were to happen, like the pandemic happened, obviously a lot of things were held up. So you had to ask for an extension, but those are under certain circumstances, but they do give you a certain time that you need to have it done. I wanna say it's 2 years.
But this would not be a drawing that would go out to bid, because we might be changing things around, as we said.
Correct.
This can't go out to bid.
No.
You need engineering drawings.
Yeah.
Right, but even, I don't think we're really too close to being ready to do engineering drawings. I just feel like there's a whole lot more to investigate. Yeah, like the playground, for example, like where that's located, and, do we really want that loop? Do we want to just start out with like a rectangle and can always add a loop?
We have an entire year to
Well,
decide
would
that.
we hold off on engineering drawings till we got the grant?
Absolutely.
Yes, none of that would even happen until December. You don't pay for engineering drawings until you,
No, you
have-
got the grant.
Right.
And it all may be a moot point if, if this is, the DNR going more back to their roots and natural resource-based scope items.
See
Yeah,
that?
it's just, I just did pickleball courts.
Yeah.
They're funding parks. They are.
I think I'm talking about the trust fund grant. Rachel
Yeah.
had a conversation with somebody and That was what they conveyed to her.
Yeah, and they'll convey that every single year, but
Yes.
I write these and I build these and last year I did 3 parks and it was all pickleball, playground. None of it was trails. So they are funding parks like this.
Until
Were
the
were
Iron
they,
Belt-
were any of those trust fund grants? So I guess that's my
All
question.
trust fund grants.
Okay,
The Iron Bell Trail is gonna be their highest priority until it's completed. I mean, that's not a secret. Acquiring land because it protects the land and they want more parks and recreation properties, that's always gonna be their top priority in some aspects. Cause that's what the grant was initially for. It doesn't necessarily mean they're not funding these, it just means they look at those other grants a little more closely. And they have a little better potential.
Well, from town to North Country Trail, which I understand is gonna be part of Iron Bell, it's only like 25 miles. We could maybe do an extension from Kiwanis over there. No, just kidding. I like where.
All the easy trails have been built.
All the what trails have been built?
All the easy trails have been
Uh-huh.
built. When I was doing this 25 years ago, it was really easy.
Uh-huh.
And now the only trails that are left in Michigan are the hard ones. The ones that need easements, the ones that need grading, the ones that, you know, are on a highway or need to go over a highway, or there are no more easy trails. They are all hard now. And that's what they're running into with Iron Belt. So much money needs to go into these just for small segments that they're even starting to question, is it worth it for them?
getting back to our project, have we heard from Dick or Scott?
I'm in favor of having the park be all year round and maintaining some of the forestry around here too. I think we have a lot of time, lots of time to make some decisions and so far we need to get the grant first.
Yeah, I just think, you know, is there anything else you need, Rachel, to proceed with the?
I would like to know from the Parks Board what your recommendation is to go to the public, what you want for the public hearing on Monday, which visual. Again, they could all be changed, doesn't matter. I just don't want to show 3 visuals. That's gonna be very confusing. So if we could pick one and say, these are our scope items, I want it formally, like I list them and we say, this is what we're going for. I'd like that as well.
Well, based on the discussions we had tonight, pick the one that you think they would like the best.
The real only difference between alternative 1 and 2, it
Right.
looks like, is the playground placement. So my recommendation would be go with alternate 1 or 2. But
Yeah.
that's, I mean, whatever you, doesn't really make a difference to me because I know it can be changed. So
What's 1 and 2? I like the
alternate
playground.
1,
Okay. I kind of like the playground where it is,
So
where,
that
as
would
opposed to
be-
moving it north.
I agree with
Yeah.
that.
okay,
I agree with that.
Playground is moved no matter what.
a little bit,
A little
yeah.
bit,
Yeah,
but
it's,
not
it
moving.
really is, because the playground in, because it's very spread out in the existing format. And so I don't want you to think that that one is, the playground is not moved, it's moved.
Yeah, you have to move some.
Well,
elements.
do we have to though? I guess would be my next question. You know, everybody's kind of interested in this loop on the ice rink as being something different. And maybe if we were to put in like some type of an ADA sidewalk loop connecting all of the little playground pods, that's something different.
Oh, it is.
And that can be discussed later when the engineering, you know, like that's what I'm saying, like it really doesn't, I just need to know which one to show to the public. We can change and do the path like Dan is saying, you know, and connect them that way as well.
I think for the public, it's gonna be, let's maintain as much as we already have.
Mhm.
They're not gonna need all the
Right,
details.
Right.
And what they're gonna see different here is that there's gonna be an added ice rink
Yeah.
and ADA accessible bathrooms and maybe some improvement in parking.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
I think.
Do we want to show the playground as it is now though, or do we want to show it as a big square? I mean, that was such a knee jerk thing on Zorn Park.
Well,
Do
I
we
think.
want to try and get money for that ADA sidewalk loop? And we could, we could say there's something about native plantings along the walk or something, that would get points.
Or like what you said about, the rain, the runoff, the parking lot and using the pavers and.
Right.
taking
I would
advantage
suggest
of
that we
the-
would go back to the drawing and put those in. If this is the one that you want, whatever one you want, we gotta get that in, so the public sees those two elements. And then. So. Dana, are you thinking about spreading out the elements throughout and walking to the elements sort of around the park, like kind of like scattering them?
Do you want to roll back up to that drawing that I was fooling around with there, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm gonna get closer to it, if you excuse me.
So my thought on, do you guys see where that little loop is, Rachel, if you want to point to it? So it connects that parking, which I think that parking located, we both had it there just a little differently, but it's really handy for parents coming to the playground. So I think what this loop is kind of nice for is kids, like a play group could bring their little tykes to ride around on it. You could have like the bus come from Perry Farms or Hillside, and it could be a little walking loop for them. We could do some.
I don't have any problems spreading out the equipment and creating a loop and putting that into the concept.
All right.
I don't have any
I
problem
think
with
that makes it a lot more flexible for the trees. I think like you
I think
said,
that it gives you some flexibility, and if you think that the community went crazy with Zorn, and this is a takeaway, a learning, let's put it in. But I like putting it in now because you're gonna want that sidewalk to be covered.
Yeah, you don't want that to go by them.
And so Rachel, let us play with that. We'll get that. We'll get the pervious pavers in, we'll get the rain garden in. I'm gonna talk to my engineers about getting some of the pipes out because we got the rain garden in. And then we'll spread out the playground equipment and then connect it with a path and then bring it back in. And once again,
could
yeah, go
I
ahead.
mention one more thing is we have the decks detached from the building. You've been to Nub's Nub, I'm sure. I just love the deck that is attached that looks out at the ski hill. So
Yeah,
I'm just,
no, that's
wonder-
great. I just hated to attack. I mean, there's so much discussion about the building and is the building gonna stay? And that was the only reason
well,
why.
I
this-
don't know. At some point, maybe we need to make the commitment. We want to try and work with that building and we want to add on to it. And that would
But
make
that
me
could be-
also feel better about those bathrooms there that we could, at some point add other bathrooms.
The sunsets are killer there, so we have a nice deck on the front of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you guys felt comfortable that, the public meeting, people said, well, what happens if the building comes down and you've got that deck there? We'll do it. We'll change it in the drawing. No issues.
I think that that's important.
Vanessa, if we use permeable pavers, does that change anything with like, or what if we even left some of the parking gravel, if you want to roll back up? I just, I don't know, I like the paving, where it is, down by the playground. I just don't know about, making.
Yeah, it's just gravel's not ADA. It's not inclusive. It's,
Okay, but I guess I'm talking about, if we were to move that parking lot, further to the west, kind of towards the composting there,
they
it
won't.
it seems
we
like
don't
there's some
have-
way
we
that
don't
the
have the soils.
engineers could come up with a way to do that, just, make the base
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
deeper.
There's another thing with that. We can't put anything over there because if we do, I have to explain that in the grant. It's a dump site.
Yeah.
Right now, we're in park property. If we go over there, that's a whole other study that's gonna have to be done for that property. It's gonna
You
make
mean where the parking is right now?
No, like if we go further towards
No,
like.
no, if you roll back up again, like where I have it shown kind of not as part of the loop, but more to the north. If you roll up again, Rachel. And slide it over.
Yeah, that is all in that bad material area. Nothing can really be put past the tanks.
what about this side of the tanks that's not viewed on the map? That is that open area to the right of the tank, that's in the tree line, that's all city property. That's not north, but it's actually a beautiful little spot for a parking lot. And then that gives you all that other room if you didn't have that parking in there.
Yeah, and I think with that, you could move the skating rink closer to the building and take down fewer trees. Like if you look where the dash
The
line
water
is.
tower or the big tank. it'd be
Yeah.
in
That's
front
a
of it.
separate parcel.
Yes, you don't own it.
Yeah.
I could have sworn it was that in front of it, behind it.
No,
Yeah, we don't own all
you
of
do
them.
not own it,
But there are trails behind there.
There are.
And it's flat there, so that
But-
could be ADA.
but the city does not own it.
I do believe we own that. Let's double check.
I think it's what.
The city owns two parcels there. There's the big one and there's a little skinny one by the water tanks.
That's, I mean, you can see our lines.
Oh,
I mean, our lines were taken off of, the parcel. But once again, that's fine. You can always wiggle around your parking at the time.
Well, can I suggest we're getting a little bit too in the weed, into
Yeah,
the weeds
I
right
would
now?
agree.
So I don't think we need to go into this depth at this point, because it is changeable. I think, do you have what you need to create the grant
I
right
need to
now?
hear from everyone that we want to go for the ice rink, concrete,
Mhm,
the ADA outdoor access restrooms, the parking,
mhm.
and that ADA live for the playground.
Agree.
How do you need to hear that from us? Does that need to be
I-
a vote?
Yeah,
AI,
yeah,
IO,
yay or nay?
okay.
All in favor?
Yeah.
All opposed? Okay. And then, what else? And then we want to go with, I think it was 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna change the playground.
Yeah, so you're gonna send it anyway. but
Right, and
based
I'm
on
gonna put the
2.
deck up on the
Yeah.
building.
Okay.
And then we gotta change some of the green, gotta get some green infrastructure
I'll
in there.
send you an email. I have a list.
Thank you.
So you're gonna go with 2?
Yeah, she'll alter it, but we'll alter it.
Yeah,
based
it's
on-
not gonna look like two.
Yeah, it'll be different.
Yeah, it's gonna look different.
All right. Moving on. This one will be fairly simple. So the Harvest Springs Skate Park, this grant request to be for, you can go up to 150,000. Fundraising dollars to be used as a match for the grant. And the application again due April 1st, grant awarded October. So this one was a little quicker than the trust fund. This would be for landscaping around the new Evergreen concrete skate park that is scheduled to go in this fall, and new windows and buildings. Before I show this image, I want to make it very clear that Evergreen will come to us with a design for the concrete skate park. And we will have multiple meetings to go over that before. So this is not for the skate park. We have the fundraising for the skate park. We're still fundraising. The grant is solely for grass, benches, trees,
Sidewalk.
new buildings, sidewalks,
Access to the building.
yep, and windows.
Where are the sidewalks going?
I'll show you. I just wanted to get that out. before we went here. So the conversation is less about this and more about this. The sidewalk around, we have tables, trees, and else I'll let you go.
So, trying to stay with the existing pickleball court, and I know that the ramp people will be finalizing their plan. But, I think the take homes is that we're trying to get some trees, on city property, not in the right of way. Cause so many trees were taken down, so we're looking to provide some shade there, in the southern side on the summer months. We have grassy berms, so people can sit on the berms. The interior is grass if folks want to have picnic there or whatever. Once again, I'm leaving that open for safety reasons. I want to make sure that there's a fall zone. There's a sidewalk, a 5-foot sidewalk that goes all the way around the ramp that will allow more access to the ramp and more opportunities to walk around without getting in the way of the skaters. And then, of course, there's the ADA access to the buildings. And then there's just some foundational plantings, trying to go with a little native. All of the plants will be native in hopes of getting some points that way.
So what would likely happen, just so you kind of know, like in October, we'd be awarded it, but we would get the plans from Evergreen, we would go over those, the skate park as a whole, just looking at the skate park. And then when we got the grant, we had the engineer, we would base the landscaping off then that Evergreen design. So it's a little
Rachel, are
bit,
we hoping to do ADA bathrooms here too?
no,
No. Don't you have ADA bathrooms there?
I believe we do.
Yeah, they're already
We don't have
there.
bathrooms
yeah.
that are accessible outside, but they are ADA.
yeah, the ones in the building and the building's open. And the skate park's open, so that gets around needing outdoor access. If the Kiwanis building was staffed at all times and always open, we would make those indoor ones ADA accessible.
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
And then is something changing with the pickleball courts? That looks a little different.
no, it's just an older image.
It's just,
They're not
we could get
resurfaced
another
here.
image.
Yeah, they're not resurfaced here.
We're not messing with them at
So
all.
the high fencing would come down, the high fencing would come down here that separates the pickleball courts and the skate park, and that'll be that nice 4-foot black fencing that is now the pickleball court, so it all aligns.
Is it
And we
like
actually put
black
that in
vinyl
green.
chain link or?
Yeah,
It's chain link, yeah, the
it's
black.
that vinyl chain link.
Yeah.
And we did put it in the grant in hopes of seeing if the state would buy it.
And then does fencing go around the whole skate park?
There would be no fencing around the skate park.
None. And
None?
I think that the berms, so we have the vegetation and then we have the berms to try and delineate that space. So we're actually delineating that space with more of a natural element.
Would there be a concern of people using the skate park when it's closed, if there's not a fence around it?
So that is something we'll have to discuss with staff. So there is lighting around the skate park currently. It closes at 10, correct, right now in the summer?
9 or 10, but that's a pretty big talking point. I mean, there's a lot of layers to having that conversation about fences or no fences. You want my opinion?
Yes.
Absolutely no fences.
Yeah.
We are a very strange situation where we have fences. We go across the entire country, the whole world, skate parks and this type of environment, especially what we're going for, this really natural, beautiful evergreen park, beautiful landscaping. You do not put a fence around it. I think that we have this sense of security that, you know, we put our kids in a place where there's a fence and then we just drop them off and leave them. The guy who runs the park, that's not the way it should be. Parents should have a different concept of when they pick up and drop off their kids, and having that fence there is a false security blanket.
And it'd be something we would discuss with the officers, of course, that, you know, now it's not fenced and there's gonna be
So
potentially.
does that open up liability at all? No?
No.
So what elements of this exactly would the grant cover? So that you've got the berms on the outside, so that's for people just to sit and watch, observe.
Exactly. So if you look at the key, we're looking to remove and replace the fence. We're gonna throw that out there, see if it sticks. We have a 5-foot walkway around the skate park design. We have the foundational plantings at the building. We have the berms.
Mhm.
I did throw in picnic tables and, because the DNR likes those. And then, the plantings along the right of way. So those are the plantings that are on the south side.
So the green space in the center there is that picnic tables or what?
Yeah, those are 2 picnic tables. I just,
All right.
And likely the planning, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, likely the plannings along M119 will wait until this project is completed. They would do the ones in
Victor
front of
did
Big Bluff,
confirm that, yeah.
not in front of Big Bluff, those would be planted, but the ones in front of the skate park, would, because we wouldn't want to plant new trees and then do this project, so.
And then there'll be greenery blocking it from
Correct.
119.
Correct.
yeah.
Now
Do
it
we
looks
have-
just
do
like
we
a
have-
beach on the wall.
It's not attractive.
No.
I
So
have a-
it's beautiful.
I have a question for Vanessa. Do we have seating for parents and grandparents that come to watch their kids?
Yeah, not part of the grant. If you're gonna seat, I mean, we have picnic tables, you can certainly, have cafe tables, you can have movable seating. Or you're on the berms, but it's not part of the grant.
I wonder if it could be, if there's a reason why it wouldn't be.
Someone just needs to tell me what they want.
Yeah. Couple benches, yeah.
Seating and shade are big parts of the success of.
Are lights part of the grant?
No, lights are not.
And if you have the picnic tables in the center, like when Henry was little, I would sit inside the building and just read. Now he goes by himself but I would just hang out in there.
How does somebody get there? Do you have to cross over the park to get down in there? Is there easy access to the center? I'm just curious how that works.
For the skate park, like
Yeah,
to get
for
to the
skate park,
center,
the
if
green-
Evergreen were to go with this design, it would be, walk through, there's not like a
Yeah,
path or
like a
anything,
walk.
yeah. It'd be like if you were skating and you stopped and you went to a picnic table. Something.
I just wonder if it might be more functional to have the picnic tables like in that kind of patio area outside the building.
You can put them anywhere you want.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
DNR
yeah.
doesn't mind where we put the picnic tables.
I'm just trying to get the DNR to pay for them.
Okay, I think it looks great.
This is kind of a pipe dream here, but shade is a huge problem. And now that those pines are gone, those pines only provided a little bit of shade on a certain time of the day. So I problem solved last season and I was using sails in different ways to provide shade for the pickleballers and what I could for the skaters. Could we have a system put in place where we have a couple big, huge, I hate to say it, but poles to utilize the existing sales that we have, that are a big part of the aesthetic of our town, and have in that green space funding going to have the poles, because we got great sales for shade, we just need the foundations.
They're the sales from Marina Park,
Yeah,
and they didn't, yep.
Good
But
idea.
that would be
I
a
think
good
it's a good
community
idea.
project.
I
I
think it's a
mean,
good
you're
idea.
just digging holes and pouring some concrete. Me and my kid could do that.
I think Nate was saying for the poles themselves to be donated, right? Like,
yeah, I'm just,
Like big-
I know that we have the sales, and the last time when the sales were to go up downtown, or down there was an issue with the foundation, because they were next to the water. So what I'm pitching here is that seating and shade is a huge part of it.
I think
Right now,
that's a
we're
good
at
idea.
Zero shade, we got these great sales.
Are
Can
you,
we incorporate this into the grant to have poles? Because I mean, I problem solving with the fencing, all that fencing's gone, I had nowhere to put up the sales anymore.
You know, I didn't put anything in the center really, like, that had a foundation. I just didn't think about the ramps. So I didn't know if it was like a safety hazard to have anything in that center.
You know, like essentially some nice looking flag poles that can act as foundations for the sails.
I wonder if that would be a liability. There was some kid that goes off the track and hits his head on the pole.
I would just check with you, I would just check with the ramp people, that's all.
I'll put a question mark.
I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah.
And because also the cement gets hot.
Oh,
Yeah, and so it'd be nice to have a portion that's shaded or.
Did you have a
A shade
specific,
option.
only if I can ask Evergreen, did you have a specific area you were thinking, like?
Well,
maybe
looking at that,
here?
I would say,
here.
you know, essentially you have to have 3 poles for each one,
Right,
okay? And depending on how you grid it out, you get really creative with having different options of different times of the day. I mean, I don't think you should have like a dozen poles spread out into that area, but I would essentially map it out where based on the size of the poles, they could be, or based on the sizes of the sails, you can move them around accordingly throughout the day, because that's what we're already doing.
how vague can we be in the grant for shading? If we say like, we wanna do a shade structure, but we have to wait to see what Evergreen's final concept is. I just don't know how big you
So-
can go.
I can put in there the poles,
Yeah.
and we can put a number of the poles in. I think to sell it though, you need to prove that we own the sales. So maybe pictures that show that we have them, we just don't have a way to use them. And so this is where you start gilding the lily a little bit more. That's all. Just we've got these sales, we can't use them. We want to actually install poles and get some shade out there.
Well, if there's seats, we'll be good.
I just
Good idea.
think pickleball as well, it's a really, there's a lot of sun up there and nobody has any kind of escape from the sun. So options for shade really do have to be looked at.
Go to the tennis courts, you got 0 too. I mean, that's just the nature of it.
Any other questions or comments on the skate park? The nice thing about this grant is we have the match. We have more than what they're requesting for the match. And it's already a project that's happening, so that should score fairly well with DNR, knowing the skate park's going in no matter what. They can add to the project, so we have all the components in place. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, and also the nice thing is the donors know their funds are going solely towards the skate park and not landscaping, which is what their dollars were intended for, so.
And how much are we asking for?
I think, combined sheet, let me see.
Yeah, cost estimate follows
Cost of
it.
it is 78,000. You can ask up to 150, so.
So if we get the grant, when do we start using the money? Would be the next summer?
You get, yeah, so Evergreen would come in the fall, we get a word in October, and then we would start the spring. This one happens fairly quicker than the trust fund grant. Doesn't have to go to the board and go through that whole process.
But realistically, we're not looking at implementing, because if they're not starting till October, right?
None of this will be till
It would be
2024,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
spring of 24.
Correct, yep.
You mentioned earlier today, the new bike trail going under the spillway, you know, so we don't have to carry bikes up steps under the highway. Is there any way to incorporate part of that into this, or is that just not something
Be a
passport
separate
grants will do?
project, yeah, unfortunately. It would be enough funding for both.
Take care
You
of
can only, yeah, you can only apply up to 150.
Guys, I'm gonna duck off now. Thanks and
Bye again.
good progress.
Bye.
it.
See you Monday. Bye.
So what I need for this is I need to know that the scope items, remove and replace fence, a 5-foot walk around, remove and install new windows, foundation plantings, berms, picnic tables / seating, plantings along right away, and the possibility of shade if we wanna investigate that
Poles.
further.
Yeah,
Poles.
poles. And I agree that the DPW guys and everybody, the foundation's good, we can incorporate the shading, I think that's very doable. Was lighting part of this design? So I'm thinking that the existing lighting that's gonna come down, probably when the fences come down, all that electrical will still be there, but just thinking of existing lighting on that side versus what is a pickleball side.
I don't have lighting in this, it's lighting so expensive.
Who's responsible for that?
The lighting, Evergreen would have to work within their confines of keeping the lighting.
How much is it?
Lighting,
Yeah,
if we took it out and put new lighting in, oh,
Well, the
this
existing,
one grant in itself, probably
150,000, you're saying?
more, probably.
Probably more.
well, I guess I'm coming from, maybe when the fence comes out, we can try to leave the existing poles that have the lights, so we can still have those lights.
Work with your utility folks and try and keep those lights there.
Yeah, the electrical department.
Right.
We will be able to.
If the
judge
city
what we
can't
can do.
maintain those.
We changed out the bulbs to fancier bulbs on the pickleball side so that you have better lighting even after dark on that side. So when people want to play basketball after dark, they can. And I'm just thinking now, if everything comes down, I hope we can keep the poles up on the
Lucas-
far side.
Had mentioned something when we met together, that he thought the electrical, everything went the opposite way of where the concrete skate park will be. So he
Yeah.
doesn't think it's gonna, how do I wanna put this, not an electrician, take away from that, didn't he kind of mention that? That
Yes.
goes away from the building,
Yes.
towards the pickleball courts and out that way. So when they do the tear down, they do all that, it shouldn't, take out any of that.
I don't know why they just can't leave the lights there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
they should be able to. 'cause
It's a
everything-
good
yeah.
point to think about, because if we're not careful, we get ripped out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, there's been no plans to remove the lighting in any aspect.
And when the ramp goes in,
So,
discuss it with them.
all in favor, say aye of these.
Aye.
spots. Anyone opposed?
But just one comment.
Yeah.
Remove and replace fence. We're just going to remove it though, right?
We're
Not replace it.
And we're replacing this with that black fence.
Okay.
It's not a big,
Big
wall down.
cage. Okay, got it.
That's the perfect word.
Yes, it's okay. Sure, yeah.
I want to bring up something about the fencing that's is important here, is that on the road side, and maybe this would be solved with landscaping. I know I've had parents talk about the traffic of the cars flying by there. In the past, we have the big fence that's on the roadside for boards to catch. We don't have anything to catch the boards from running into 119. I'm just throwing that out there that we have to consider. I don't want a fence on that side, but we do have to consider how much bushes and this and that happen because boards are gonna fly towards the road.
Here or here? Oh,
There,
here,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What kind of ramp is there? How steep is that? Is it,
Well, right now, there's the high berm there and then the sidewalk,
right,
but before there was all the pines and then a huge, well, right now, there's a huge fence, so there's
right.
no way for those boards to fly out. When the fence comes down, they could fly out.
Fly out even with it.
Well, I mean, I can.
I'm not too worried about it.
So, no, what we can do, I wanted to get all of the plantings on city property.
Yeah.
I took them all out of the right of way on purpose. My first, design had a berm here,
Yeah.
okay? And these kind of like eked into the right of way. And these are big canopies, but we can still get a berm in there, just something to delineate that a little bit more.
Because right now, the two pipes, the bowl on that side, and the bowl on that side, if they shoot out, they're designed right now to shoot out towards the baseball fields or towards 119. They're not designed to shoot towards pickleball. They're not designed to shoot out towards Bay Bluffs.
Yeah, so I think that those berms capture it. Then this is just going
And
inside.
another reason is because the sidewalk gets used constantly by Bay Bluffs. It's a huge part of their, they're constantly walking the wheelchairs and this and that. And I know on the daily, what I'm gonna need to police is without a fence there, how much of that, I'm just thinking of
I know,
one
right?
kid. No fence, we don't have it supervised because there's not as much fencing there anymore and shoots out, hits guy in the wheelchair.
So what if there was a fence installed across the 119 side, but with greenery on both sides, so it's camouflage?
Yeah.
But then it's like a safety shield, so people don't get hit by skateboards don't go on the roads, whatever, kids don't run into the road after the skateboard. And you just put a stretch of fence in and the greenery on both sides, like arborvitae, it's hidden, but it's there.
How tall do you think that's gonna be? Yeah.
Hmm?
How tall do you think that's gonna be?
I think you only need a 3 foot.
Yeah,
You
like a
only need
3
a 3 foot.
Kind of like a
Yeah, maybe
pickleball.
1.8 probably, how.
You could do something decorative.
I don't really per se think it needs to be a fence, it just has to be enough berm and landscaping things to safeguard ourselves, or whatever the language would be that safeguards us.
You think we have enough here?
I think so, but I definitely wanted to bring it up.
The engineer too would be able to, once we get engineer drawings, we can dig into that, once we have.
I can throw more money into the berming.
Yeah.
I think I have it in machine grading.
Another part too is depending on how big that loop is and how much more concrete goes into that design. We're gonna end up probably way closer than the building than the existing park is now. So the chances of it coming into the road are actually less because I think that design is closer to the building. Closer to the.
Yeah, I was shooting.
Okay, yeah.
Shoot from the hip, unfortunately, on that one. It's clear that they don't have their design done yet, so I just tried to get it onto the site to the best of my ability.
I think we can all agree though, this is prettier than what's up there right now. I don't see there being a lot of any issues once we move forward. So this will be the design then that goes for the public hearing. And then let's open it for public comment if we have anyone on Zoom. Is there, or go ahead, Scott.
I'll open it up. Okay, so is there anyone on Zoom that would like to make a public comment? If you would raise your hand
On either of the grants.
on either of the grants. Please do so.
We don't see anyone. So. We are all set.
So it is 7:30 8. Meeting's adjourned.
I'll give everybody a copy to think about for the master.
Children, and or my children.
No way.
Wait.